Welcome to the Future of Less Work, where we're exploring how work is changing one conversation at a time. I'm Nirit Cohen, and today's episode dives into what it really looks like when AI becomes more than just a tool and starts to reshape how entire companies create value. So far, most of our tools showed up as experiments or isolated use cases, but once we start looking at AI from the enterprise level, we should see real transformation. New ways to design work, lead teams, and grow the business. That's why I really wanted to have this conversation with Dan Priest, Chief AI Officer at PwC US. Dan is leading PwC's $1 billion AI investment, helping some of the world's largest organizations rethink work with AI at the center. And he's bringing us insights from PwC's latest AI Jobs Barometer. Dan, welcome to the Future of Less Work.
It's great to be with you, Nirit.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. I'm actually curious. What does AI at the enterprise scale really look like today?
Well, AI is on this incredible growth curve right now. Full-scaled AI in the legacy enterprise business, frankly, has not really been achieved. It's work in progress. Companies they spent a lot of 2024 proving that these capabilities are real, seeing the proof points show up in very focused ways. 2025 is about scaling it, and that's an ambitious undertaking because of all the change that's associated with it. So, what does it look like? What will the destination look like?
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe fast forward a few years. Don't want to
Yeah.
put the number on it, but if you're thinking, or frankly, if we took a blank piece of paper, started a company today from scratch and said, okay, we're going, enterprise wide, what would that vision look like, feel like to you?
It's a what I describe as an AI first mindset and capability system. So
What does that mean?
business strategy is powered by capabilities, and capabilities like people, process, technology. Um, and that capability system is shifting fundamentally towards AI. There's a whole new layer of the workforce called agents. Those agents are taking not only the routinized rule-based tasks, but also just adding so much incredible intelligence to real-time interactions with customers, stakeholders, and the enterprise of the future is going to be incredibly efficient, highly effective because they're taking touches out and replacing those touches with intelligence. And there will be new offerings that spring up, legacy services, legacy products. There'll be downward pressure with customers expecting efficiencies that show up in pricing. The enterprise will likely find new sources of value from that intelligence that goes into their products and services.
Okay,
That-
hold on. I'm going to slow you
yeah,
down here for a second because everything you've said up until this last piece, right, was this conversation that we're having that we seem to be having today, right? Bring in the agents.
hmm
They will do a lot of the work. We're expecting to see efficiencies and cost saving all the way to the markets showing hiring freezes. And, there's a lot of question on, is there room for people here?
hmm
So
So
how does that play out? What do you think is happening?
yeah, so AI promises to be disruptive, and we're already seeing that in companies. Our jobs barometer shows evidence of that. The the changes are existing jobs will be transformed. And in the short term, that change is uncomfortable, particularly for people. Um, leaders want the benefits. Leaders are chasing the new standard for table stakes so that they can compete effectively in the market. It's forcing them to rethink how they run their business, and the jobs that people do today are going to be different tomorrow. That said, the human value proposition will continue to evolve. That is the one thing I can say with a lot of confidence based on history, is that there is a certain indomitable spirit that will show up, and humans will find a new value proposition that's compelling. And leaders, again, we saw this in our jobs barometer report. Leaders will have to create trust that that's going to happen. They're going to have to think about what are the new skills that are required. What is the role of the human with the agent? But we're not seeing necessarily a replacement. It is, certainly there's tasks that will be fully automated, and there'll be a shift in human focus. But if you look at contact centers, for instance, some of the best use cases in contact centers are where the humans are augmented by AI.
Yeah,
And
we've been doing so this is an example of a job or a service, right? That we've been over the years automating. Once you have scripted answers, right? You can bring in something else that will give the scripted answers. And so assuming that keeps getting automated is interesting. I think what people are wondering, and it feels like, it feels like it's what they're wondering from both ends, right? The people are wondering, is there something left for me to do? And I think leaders are wondering, can I push the numbers down, get more agents, less people, cut the cost, 24/7, nobody gets sick, nobody asks for vacation. And I get this productivity, and I actually don't need the humans. And I'm really curious to get your sense of why you think we do. And I will say that I strongly believe we do, because I think if everybody uses the same agents, then what makes you you, right? What makes you different than the next company? Um,
yeah.
but I'm really curious to get your perspective on what you think is the reason why we can't just push this and get all the way to the billion-dollar company with no people.
So again, we're seeing there's some interesting entrepreneurial startups that can operate at a fundamentally different cost level because they've taken an AI first to their business. So we know that the frontier is shifting, right? The efficiency frontier is shifting, and again, that will be disruptive. But even in those startups, humans are at the core, right? They're
Yeah.
thinking strategically about their business. They are the ones who are making the strategic decisions. It's not that they won't use AI to inform those strategic decisions, but they are at the core of that management team. They are at the core of the execution of the strategy, and they're being augmented by this new level of intelligence. And the reason I have conviction, and I'm sure it's the reason why you believe it too, is that evidence shows that over time jobs shift with technology, and humans do less and less of the routinized work. They do more things better because of more intelligence and more data, more real time analytics flowing through workflows, but they don't go away. So
Yeah, they
my
create more value, right? That's basically what you're
exactly.
saying.
There's
Yeah.
no example in history where technology didn't have a net positive effect on job growth. And now people will suggest this is new and different. This is a different level of automation. That's true. And so we have to be prepared for, pioneering this change a bit. But that's my point about the human spirit finding a value.
Yeah, okay. So I think we're totally aligned here. I actually want to go back to the enterprise level. So historically, again, if we go back to history, right? A lot of times
Yep.
technology was big, heavy, complicated, expensive, was owned by the company, brought in, and you had, IT come in, they brought in a system, they deployed it, right? Something about how AI entered the organizations in the last couple of years was actually more a bring your own, bottom up, let's figure out how to do this, quick and dirty. And I'm not sure that that's conducive to reinventing how work gets done, restructuring jobs, maybe even restructuring entire work processes. So, how would you go about doing that?
It's a great question. One I talk to with clients about all the time. I was just in this exact conversation yesterday, and what you see is AI is becoming an intrinsic part of the way work gets done, and it shows up in the routine. And if it's sort of citizen led, bottom up, what happens is people get a little bit more productive, and frankly, work life balance gets better. And human relationships get stronger because there's more time at the water cooler. But it's not structural change at that point.
Right,
And I've done transformation for pretty much my whole career. And what I learned was if you're in the 5, 10, 15% efficiency range, that's not structural. You need to be in the 30, 40% efficiency range before you can rethink how a function gets managed.
right.
And so to do that, it's not just about adopt the tools, right? To do that, it is reimagine with a clean sheet how the customer experience could be managed in a contact center. And don't be bound by incremental improvements. Really think about what intelligence can do to create faster time to value and a differentiated customer experience.
So now I get the trust conversation because you're actually taking the customer success people and telling them to reimagine how their job can be done at a 50, 60% variance, or maybe not, they're not even in it, right? And this human reaction of, if I let go of all this, what's going to happen to me, is very natural. So what would you
Exactly.
tell a leader to make sure that because the leadership they can't redesign this. It needs to get redesigned by the people who know what's going on,
Yeah.
right?
So absolutely. So the workforce that's going to succeed in this change will be the workforce that learns and develops new skills to avail themselves of the intelligence. And let me tell you why in an example. Going back to the contact centers, for instance. Uh, when a call comes in, there's so many, we always talk about data as data repositories sitting in systems of record. But in the real time, in the moment, there's a ton of data streaming. It's sentiment, right? It's satisfaction in the voice. It's frustration in the voice. It's hovering around a certain product feature, right? It's considering past purchase, right? There's so many data flowing in that real time interaction. Too many for the human alone to make sense of and to take advantage of. But when the AI agent is combined with the human, they can detect, by the way, this person's getting frustrated with you. Let me suggest some different techniques to engage so it brings down the frustration.
Okay, real time. Okay, you're giving me a number of things here. You're giving me real time analysis of what's going on, real time coaching of what I can say, whether it's interaction based or response based or solution based, right? You're basically saying somebody's going to do all that. Um, I'm going to put you on hold and find out in milliseconds, and then give me the response that I can give the customer.
Yeah, I'm saying that with an AI agent coaching you through that experience, it can happen so fast. It's real time pivots that create a better experience for your customer, that leads to more purchases, that leads to better outcomes.
Why would I
And
need the person to begin with? I mean, if AI can do all that in the background, as if I'm the leader now listening to this conversation, right? If I can do that, and it will learn how to speak, right? And you will not know that you're speaking with AI. Why do I need the person?
So, by the way, that's already here. I was with one of my clients, and they were sharing a story about how a woman had called into the contact center, and we were working with them on an AI solution, and the customer feedback was that was one of the best, most empathetic conversations that I've had with a customer service representative ever. I'm so glad you're not using AI. And she was unwittingly talking about an AI agent. So it is, it is here. Like it works very well. It is much better than the early generations of these contact center solutions. So that's already
So,
here.
okay, so my question stands. So this is back to, why do I need the people?
So you can tell we're not dealing yet with sentient technology. AGI is close, but not here. You can feel that when if that customer spent more time with that agent, they would
They would
start
have
to
figured it out.
they would
Yeah.
start to figure it out, right? As conversations shift and evolve and go in unexpected direction. Now it's still good, right? But the human is much better, and the human is navigating that in a way that an AI agent would, you'd start to see the seams. And uh, I do think, again, it's just an interesting example of how immediately we're seeing that amplification happen, that performance boost take hold when you have these combinations, human and agent.
Yeah, and you're
Eh,
also giving an example where, as a person, as a human who's providing a service and doesn't like to get yelled at by unsatisfied customers, you're giving me tools to do my job better,
exactly.
and I get that. Do you have other examples? I thought that was a fabulous one. Other examples of where, if we really restructured the work completely, that would bring us the value.
So the other bit, and you're seeing this show up in interesting ways in the job market. But the other example is around code generators. And so I remember when I first saw a code generator work a couple of years ago, I I was so impressed that something that took humans years to learn how to do, is fairly complex. We could now take the process, the systems development lifecycle, from designing a system, developing requirements for it, figuring out the functional specifications, translating those into technical specs, developing the code, testing the code, getting it into production. So much of that is now done with AI, and it is astoundingly good. And what we're seeing is the developers are finding new sources of value, right? Now, a lot of companies are shifting into, okay, now I'm going to fix my data layer, super complicated stuff where those skills are relevant. And then others who are not traditional coders in this new world of coding with the English language step in and say, I can I can build
I
an
have an
app.
idea, and I don't need a coder now to yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah,
So
totally.
you think about, I say that I love the fact that my smartphone's getting smarter, that the enterprise systems that I deal with are getting more touchless and intelligent. I like the benefits of AI showing up in my workflow. And there's so many more ways that I would welcome digital assets into my work life. And that again will happen with, more people being able to develop code, more digital assets will enter production.
Yeah, so now is a good time to talk about skills, right? Because we spent number of decades telling people to go learn to code if they wanted to have a safe, future-proof career,
Right.
and a good salary. Now the machines are doing that, and we're sending them back to do something else. I'm not sure we're teaching them to do that. Um, what do you think organizations play? So at the enterprise level, right? You're bringing in these tools. What is the organization's job in actually reskilling? Or I'm not even sure that's that's the right word anymore. Getting the people um, reskilled with the tools they need, not just the AI, but actually the value add portion.
I think it's what will make a good leader. Our people are very important to our bit. I'm talking about PwC. Our people are incredibly important to our business. My a portion of my retirement depends on that next generation of workers eventually becoming partners, and so we've designed this sort of legacy model into our business,
So you're
and I
compensated for growing your people,
yes,
which a lot of organizations aren't. We're
right.
compensating for delivering work.
Right. And my point is simply that because of my incentive, I care a lot about investing in the next generation skill set. And those incentives, if you're not incentivized that way in your particular company, whatever it might be, uh, you should be, right? You should be rethinking what the role of the workforce is, how those skills need to be evolving, where you think there will be discontinuities, how do you navigate those discontinuities so that the human does end up at the value, with a value proposition. And I will tell you why. I will tell you why. Don't underestimate what people will do to undermine change if they don't see a value proposition for them at the end of that journey. They,
So that you actually were circling around the same, and I totally agree with you. But I think you've helped at least me really pinpoint the one thing that will make or break an enterprise level transformation, right? Because you cannot redesign those jobs from the top. You can't. There's too much going on, right? You need to have the people doing the work really understand it, and they're cutting the branch they're sitting on in their minds, right? So you have to build that trust, which I think you've talked about, right? To say basically, I will you're helping the organization through the transition, we will help you through the transition. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
that's right. I have done. I told you before. I've done so much transformation in my career, and there have been extraordinary benefits that have been left on the table because we didn't bring the people along effectively. And even when leadership, CEO level support, wanting the change, if the people don't get on board with it, that change is in jeopardy. And that's never been truer. That's never been true. I've used this before, but it resonates. I spend half my time working on artificial intelligence and the other half of my time doing therapy on people reacting to artificial intelligence. It's it's such a human reaction, and
Yeah.
people they're nervous about what it means to them. Uh, People are in all different places about AI. And it's really kind of interesting too. The early career stage folk, they're going to be the most disrupted, and they're the most excited about, like, what does this thing mean to me, and can you get me trained on it, and I want to have it show up in my work. I want to talk about it, in my social posts, and I want a cool bragging right around how I'm using AI to do neat things.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to respect that, but
Yeah. Yeah, and frankly, it's the only vehicle they have to actually get in the workforce right now because they
exactly.
don't have Um, I mean, the entry level positions, like you said, the coders, we don't need the entry level coder right now. What we do need is a lot of the skills that I don't think we taught them because the skills that you got when you're actually in the workforce and you got mentored within your job. Do you think that's the we're seeing the end of formal degrees or a different kind of resume?
But the honest answer is I don't know, but I don't think so. I actually think that there's some really interesting new skills developing that will be relevant to this transformation. I'm talking
Like
about
what?
like cognitive science, the ability to um, have computers work in the context of how humans think. That is AI. And if you believe what we just talked about, that humans will find a way to have a value proposition, that will be super important. The computers, the systems, the machines will need to think like humans to be most impactful and helpful. And that is a discontinuity in this tech journey. Right? It
Yeah,
was
I
always the
actually
other way.
remember, I remember a robot arm barista in San Francisco that needed to be slowed down because humans wouldn't take a cup of coffee from something that worked so fast they couldn't watch it make it, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Humans are
What else?
complicated.
Yeah, oh, yeah. What other examples of skills you think we would see emerge?
So there'll be certainly an amplification of things like data science. And it's not just the traditional data solutions. I gave the example of real-time data flowing and being able to take advantage of that. But there's also new techniques to get value from data sets that I've done a lot of data projects in my career, and they're very hard to get to pay off because data is so complicated.
But isn't
And
the whole point of AI is that you don't need the data structure that we used to do for standard systems?
you have very effective workarounds, but the highest performing use cases, like if you go into life sciences, trust me, they're investing a lot in their scientific data to inform the drug discovery process to
Yeah.
support that.
Yeah, because I
And
keep thinking about the human, mirror perspective of that because we've never bothered teaching people to ask the questions, assuming that, there's infinite ability to get to solutions and data. So,
yeah, but
yeah.
data will be still incredibly valuable. I kind of describe it as parallel paths where, um, to your point, 20 years ago I did a data project and we were looking at spend data, and the system was having a hard time recognizing that clerical services, administrative services, secretarial services were all the same thing because there was no common information model. Now, because Gen AI is so context aware, operates in natural language, is cognitively powerful, it knows that that's the same thing. You could say, you can even use the colloquial terms like vehicle, car, my ride, and it knows you're talking about the same thing. So you have a synthetic common information model that wasn't available before. You know how much
Yeah.
time and money
Yes,
companies
I
have
do
spent?
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, I
Yes.
understand, which goes back to, so what do we need humans to be able to do once you start having this capability, right?
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, Dan, I'm actually wondering because I did ask you what you thought, where you thought this was going. We're really good at giving answers. That's what we were taught to do. But what do you think is the question we should all be asking ourselves about the future of work?
It is, how will the human value proposition evolve? And the AI capabilities are reality today. You're not going to put that genie back in the bottle at this point. And so we know that at the high level, it's going to include this human agent AI agent combination. But every time, just to be super transparent, every time I think this is the domain of the human, AI shows up and is like, I can help with that. Right? It's constantly evolving. I'm like, wow. Informing strategic decision making. That contact center example I gave, where the agent was able to be empathetic. I thought empathy was going to be the domain of the human, right? So
Yeah.
we have to be open to the human value proposition evolving. We have to be committed to doing that thoughtfully and planfully and strategically and proactively. But it is really hard to predict. But the operative question is, how will it evolve? How fast it will evolve? And what will you end up looking like in terms of a workforce? And the second, I will tell you, as leaders, the leaders who are most visionary and most articulate about what that evolving value proposition looks like will build the most trust in their workforce and get them, like, the second you can ring fence what is theirs, they're going to be really open to disrupting
Yes.
everything outside of that.
Yes, and that, to me, that is my biggest takeaway from this conversation, because I've been involved in so many enterprise level systems, and I know that these are really hard, and business process redesign and redesigning jobs, and those are really hard. They always were. And I was sitting there preparing for our conversation today, trying to imagine what it looked like to actually bring in AI at the enterprise level. And I think what you got me to see, and thank you for that, because it's really an interesting, I think, almost like a roadmap for leaders, right? If you want this to go all the way to where it to the fullest potential, you have to bring the people along, and to bring the people along, they have to be part of what comes after, right? Because if all they're doing is designing themselves out of the job, they're not going to do it, and you won't get it.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah,
well said.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dan, for joining me today. This was really interesting. For more about Dan Priest and PwC's AI Job Barometer, check the links in the podcast description. You'll also find a recap and additional resources. Thank you for joining us on The Future of Less Work, where we're piecing together the ever-changing puzzle of work. And remember, the new social contract is a win-win between people and organizations. Your best people do not work because you tell them to, because you measure them on it. They work because they want to, because by working for you, they're doing what's important for them in life. Till next time.